The avoidant has realized they made a mistake losing you. They're thinking about you constantly, regretting their patterns, missing what you had together. They genuinely want you back in their life. But here's the twist that reveals everything about avoidant psychology. Even though they want you back, even though they're the one who pushed you away, even though they're the one whose patterns destroyed the relationship, they're still expecting you to be the one to reach out first. They want reconciliation, but they're waiting for you to initiate it. They want you back, but they need you to make it easy for them by doing the vulnerable work of reaching out. This expectation reveals that even in their regret, even in their desire for you, the avoidant is still operating from their defended position. They still can't tolerate the vulnerability of being the one who reaches out, admits they want you, and risks rejection. Understanding this dynamic is crucial because it shows you that their wanting you back doesn't mean they've actually changed or become capable of the relationship you need. Here's why avoidants want you back but still expect you to reach out first, and what this means for any possibility of reconciliation. They can't tolerate being the vulnerable one who reaches out. The avoidant wants you back, but the idea of being the one to reach out first feels impossibly vulnerable. Reaching out means admitting they care, that they miss you, that they were wrong to let you go. It means risking that you'll reject them, ignore them, or tell them it's too late. This vulnerability is exactly what the avoidant has spent their entire life avoiding. Even though they want reconnection, the fear of vulnerability is still stronger than their desire. So they remain paralyzed, waiting for you to make the first move and remove the risk for them. The inability to reach out also reveals that the avoidant hasn't actually done the work to heal their core wounds. If they had, they'd understand that vulnerability is necessary for connection and they'd be willing to risk it to get you back. But they're still operating from the same defended place they were in during the relationship. They still need to feel safe and in control. They still can't handle the possibility of rejection or the exposure that comes with admitting they need someone. This means even if you do reach out and reconciliation happens, they'll likely run the same patterns because the underlying wounds that created those patterns haven't been addressed. The avoidance of vulnerability also includes the avoidant wanting you to make it easy for them by doing the emotional labor. They want you to reach out so they can respond positively without having to be the one who was vulnerable first. They want you to take the risk so they don't have to. They want you to do the uncomfortable work of initiating so they can just accept or reject your offer without exposing themselves. This expectation that you should do the vulnerable work even though they're the one who wants you back shows they're still centered on their own comfort rather than actual relationship repair. They're testing if you still care without having to show they care. By waiting for you to reach out, the avoidant is essentially testing whether you still care about them without having to reveal that they still care about you. If you reach out, it confirms you're still interested, still thinking about them, still open to reconnection. This gives them information and power without requiring them to expose their own feelings or desires. It's a way of getting what they want, reassurance that you still care, without having to be vulnerable about wanting that reassurance. The test also allows the avoidant to maintain their defended position of being the less interested party. If you reach out first, they get to be the one who's being pursued even in reconciliation. They get to maintain the power dynamic where you want them more than they want you, or at least where it appears that way. This preservation of the power imbalance is comfortable for the avoidant, even though it's toxic for actual relationship health. They'd rather maintain the illusion of being less invested than risk the vulnerability of admitting they want you as much as or more than you might want them. The testing through waiting also reveals the avoidant is still playing games rather than being authentic. Real desire for reconciliation would motivate honest, vulnerable communication. But the avoidant is still strategizing, still managing perception, still trying to control outcomes through manipulation of who reaches out first. This game playing shows they haven't matured beyond the patterns that destroyed the relationship initially. They're still more concerned with protecting their ego and maintaining control than with genuine connection. They believe their patterns are your responsibility to accommodate. The avoidant expecting you to reach out first reveals a deeper belief that their patterns are something you should work around rather than something they should change. They think because they're avoidant, it's reasonable for them to be unable to reach out, and therefore it's your responsibility to accommodate that limitation by reaching out yourself. This belief system puts the burden of managing their wounds and patterns on you rather than on them, which is fundamentally unfair and unsustainable. The expectation that you accommodate their patterns also shows the avoidant hasn't taken responsibility for how their patterns affect others. They're still viewing their avoidance as just how they are, rather than as something that hurts people and destroys relationships. If they'd actually taken responsibility, they'd understand that their patterns are their work to heal, not your burden to manage. They'd recognize that expecting you to reach out when they're the one who wants reconnection is asking you to enable their avoidance rather than challenging them to grow beyond it. This belief that you should accommodate also reveals the avoidant thinks wanting you back is enough without having to demonstrate that want through action. They feel the desire for you and believe that internal feelings should be sufficient. But feelings without action are meaningless, especially from someone whose patterns involved hiding feelings behind defended behavior. You can't know they want you back if they don't show you through reaching out. Their expectation that you should just know or should reach out anyway shows they still don't understand that love and desire require demonstration, not just internal experience. They're comfortable with the waiting game because distance feels safe. While the avoidant wants you back, the waiting period where you're both silent actually feels somewhat comfortable to them because it maintains distance. Distance is the avoidant's comfort zone. Even though they miss you and want reconnection, the space between you feels safer than the vulnerability of reaching out. So they can sustain this waiting period indefinitely because it doesn't trigger their nervous system the way closeness and vulnerability do. They're essentially waiting in their comfort zone, hoping you'll be uncomfortable enough to break first. The comfort with waiting also means the avoidant doesn't experience the same urgency you might feel about resolving things. Time passing doesn't create the same anxiety in them that it might create in you. They can wait weeks, months, even years if necessary, because the waiting doesn't feel as painful as the vulnerability of reaching out would feel. This different experience of time and urgency is why the standoff can last so long. You might feel like every day of silence makes reconciliation less likely, but they feel like they have all the time in the world because the silence is comfortable. The extended comfort with distance also reveals that their desire for you, while real, isn't strong enough to override their need for safety and control. If they wanted you desperately enough, the discomfort of reaching out would be less than the discomfort of not having you. But the math doesn't work out that way for them. The discomfort of vulnerability still outweighs the discomfort of your absence, which tells you everything you need to know about whether reconciliation would actually work. They don't want you enough to be uncomfortable, which means they don't want you enough to sustain a real relationship. They think you should understand their limitations and make allowances. The avoidant believes that because you understand attachment theory, understand their patterns, understand how hard vulnerability is for them, you should be the one to reach out and make things easy for them. They think your understanding should translate into you accommodating their limitations rather than them pushing past those limitations for you. This belief puts their comfort above your needs and dignity, expecting you to lower your standards because they can't meet reasonable ones. The expectation of understanding-based accommodation also shows the avoidant is using their attachment style as an excuse rather than as information for growth. Yes, reaching out is harder for avoidance than for secure people. But hard doesn't mean impossible, and difficulty doesn't exempt them from doing necessary things. If they wanted you enough, they'd do the hard thing. The fact that they won't do it reveals that your understanding of their patterns has become permission for them to not work on those patterns. This dynamic also shows the avoidant expects more from you than they're willing to give. They expect you to understand them, accommodate them, reach out to them, make things easy for them. But what are they offering in return? They're not understanding your need to be pursued. They're not accommodating your boundary that you won't chase someone who pushed you away. They're not making anything easy for you. The expectation is entirely one-sided, which reveals their selfishness is still intact even in their desire for you. They're hoping time will make you forget why you left. Part of why the avoidant is comfortable waiting is they're hoping that with enough time, you'll forget how bad things were or minimize the pain their patterns caused. They're counting on time to soften your memories, blur the boundaries you set, weaken your resolve to not accept poor treatment. If they wait long enough, they think you might remember the good parts and forget the patterns that made you leave, making you more likely to reach out and more willing to give them another chance without requiring real change. The hope that time heals without effort on their part shows the avoidant still doesn't understand how relationships work. Time doesn't fix patterns. Time without change just means more time passes with the same problems intact. If they're not actively working on their avoidance through therapy or serious self-work during this waiting period, then time is just creating distance, not creating growth. Coming back together after time has passed without growth means running into the same problems that caused the ending. The waiting game also allows the avoidant to avoid accountability for their patterns. If enough time passes, they think they can reconnect without having to address what went wrong before. They can frame it as starting fresh or trying again without actually examining or changing the behaviors that destroyed things the first time. This avoidance of accountability shows they want you back, but they don't want to do the work of being different, which means reconciliation would just lead to the same ending eventually. What this means for you and any potential reconciliation. Understanding that the avoidant wants you back but is waiting for you to reach out first should tell you everything you need to know about whether reconciliation is wise. If they wanted you enough, if they'd actually changed, if they were serious about doing things differently, they would reach out. They would be vulnerable. They would risk rejection. The fact that they won't do these things reveals they're still the same defended person they were before, which means reconciliation would likely follow the same painful patterns. This dynamic also shows you that reaching out to them would be rewarding their lack of growth and effort. If you do the vulnerable work of reaching out when they're the one who wants you back, you're teaching them they don't have to change or push past their comfort zone to get what they want. You're showing them they can continue being avoidant and still have access to you. This sets up a dynamic where you're always the one doing the emotional labor, always the one being vulnerable, always the one making things happen. That's not a partnership. That's you managing their patterns indefinitely. The healthiest response to an avoidant who wants you back but won't reach out is to let them sit in that discomfort. If they want you badly enough, they'll eventually overcome their fear and reach out. And if they do reach out, that vulnerability shows they've at least taken one step toward being capable of the relationship you need. But if they never reach out, if they wait forever expecting you to make the first move, then you have your answer about whether they're capable of the growth and vulnerability that real relationship requires. Either way, you maintain your dignity by not chasing someone who won't show you through action that they want to be with you. Most importantly, their waiting for you to reach out should make you question whether you even want them back. Someone who wants you but won't show you, who misses you but won't tell you, who regrets losing you but won't try to repair things, is someone still controlled by their fears and patterns. Do you really want to be with someone like that? Someone who even in wanting you can't overcome their defenses enough to reach out? Or do you deserve someone who wants you and shows you, who misses you and tells you, who values you enough to be vulnerable and risk rejection to have you in their life? The answer should be clear, and it should keep you from reaching out to someone who won't reach out to you. Why they're waiting reveals they haven't actually changed. The most important thing to understand about the avoidant wanting you back but waiting for you to reach out is that this behavior reveals they haven't actually changed in any fundamental way. Real change in avoidant patterns involves developing capacity for vulnerability, learning to reach out even when it's uncomfortable, and prioritizing connection over self-protection. If they were actually different, if they'd done the deep work required to heal avoidant attachment, they would reach out to you. The fact that they can't or won't means the same wounds and patterns that destroyed your relationship are still fully intact. The unchanged status also means that even if reconciliation happens, you'll be dealing with the same issues that caused the breakup. The avoidant who can't reach out when they want you back is the same avoidant who couldn't communicate during the relationship, who withdrew when things got hard, who prioritized their comfort over your needs. These patterns don't disappear just because they miss you or regret losing you. Without active work to heal them, which their current behavior shows they're not doing, the patterns will resurface the moment reconciliation creates any discomfort or vulnerability. Their waiting for you to make the first move also shows they're still operating from the same entitled mindset they had during the relationship. They still believe they should get what they want without having to be uncomfortable. They still think their feelings and desires should be enough without corresponding action. They still expect you to do the work of managing the relationship and their patterns. This entitlement is what made the relationship unsustainable before, and it's still present now in their expectation that you should reach out to someone who pushed you away. The lack of change is also evident in their inability to take full responsibility for the relationship ending. If they'd truly examined their role and taken responsibility, they'd understand that them reaching out is the minimum requirement for even beginning to repair the damage they caused. But they're still acting like both parties are equally responsible for reconciliation, like it's reasonable for either of you to reach out first. This failure to recognize that their patterns caused the damage, and therefore they should initiate repair shows they haven't achieved the self-awareness necessary for real change. Understanding that their waiting proves no fundamental change has occurred should protect you from the hope that maybe things would be different this time. They wouldn't be different because the person is the same, their patterns are the same, their inability to be vulnerable is the same. Their expectation that you accommodate them is the same. The only thing that's changed is they now miss you enough to want you back, but missing someone isn't the same as being capable of actually being in healthy relationship with them. Don't mistake their regret or desire for transformation. The standoff also reveals their pride is still more important than their love. The fact that the avoidant wants you back but won't reach out because it would require vulnerability reveals that their pride and ego protection are still more important to them than having you in their life. If you were truly their priority, if loving you mattered more than protecting themselves, they would swallow their pride and reach out. But they won't, which tells you where you rank compared to their need to maintain their defended self-image. You're important to them, but not as important as not being vulnerable. This priority system also shows you what life with them would be like if you reconciled. In any conflict, any difficult moment, any situation requiring vulnerability, their pride and self-protection will win over the relationship. They'll choose defending their ego over repairing connection. They'll choose comfort over growth. They'll choose their patterns over your needs. This is what they're showing you right now by waiting for you to reach out, and it's what they'll show you repeatedly if you give them another chance. The pride issue also includes the avoidant being more concerned with not looking weak than with actually getting what they want. Reaching out makes them feel weak or needy in their own mind, and avoiding that feeling is more important than having you back. This twisted priority system, where protecting self-image matters more than pursuing real connection, is a core avoidant dysfunction, and it's on full display in their current behavior. They'd rather lose you than look vulnerable, which is exactly the pattern that destroyed your relationship in the first place. The pride also prevents them from apologizing or acknowledging harm they caused, which would be necessary for any real reconciliation. They can't reach out and be vulnerable about wanting you back, so they certainly can't reach out and be vulnerable about how their patterns hurt you and take responsibility for that harm. This means even if you did reach out and reconciliation happened, you'd never get the acknowledgement and apology you deserve. The issues would just be swept under the rug in favor of starting fresh, which isn't actually possible when foundational harm hasn't been addressed. Why you should let them sit in their discomfort. The best thing you can do is maintain your silence and let the avoidant sit in the discomfort of wanting you while being unable to overcome their fear enough to reach out. This discomfort is potentially the only thing that will motivate real growth. As long as you make things easy for them by reaching out, they have no reason to push past their defenses. But if you hold firm, if you require them to be the one to reach out if they want reconciliation, you create a situation where they have to choose between their patterns and having you. That choice is what might finally motivate change. Letting them sit in discomfort also preserves your self-respect and dignity. You already spent the relationship accommodating their patterns, managing their wounds, doing the emotional labor. You already gave them patience and understanding and chances to do better. Now they want you back, but they want you to once again be the one doing the work, taking the risk, being vulnerable. Refusing to do that work shows them and shows yourself that you've learned you deserve better than being the only one who tries. The silence also tests whether their desire for you is strong enough to overcome their fears. If it is, they'll eventually reach out despite their discomfort. And if they do, that act of reaching out demonstrates they're at least capable of sometimes choosing you over their patterns, which is a minimum requirement for relationship. But if they never reach out, if they wait forever because their fear is stronger than their desire, then you know conclusively that they're not capable of the relationship you need and you can move forward without wondering what if. Most importantly, maintaining your silence protects you from repeating a painful pattern. Every time you've chased them, reached out first, done the work of connection while they remain defended, you've taught them they don't have to change. You've shown them you'll accept less than you deserve. You've enabled their patterns by accommodating them. Refusing to reach out this time breaks that pattern. It teaches them that you won't chase them anymore, that your boundaries are real, that they can't have access to you without actually showing up properly. Whether they learn that lesson or not, you've learned you're strong enough to enforce it, and that's what matters most.